Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're your shortcut to getting smart, fast. We take the source material you send our way, the articles, the books, the research, and pull out the most essential, surprising, the most important bits of knowledge.
And today, we're really diving into contradiction itself. The source is Zadie Smith's collection of essays, Changing My Mind. And what's really interesting is this book was kind of an accident.
An accident? How so?
Well, she says herself she didn't realize I'd written it until someone pointed it out to me. It grew out of these occasional essays she wrote over years.
Right, pieces written because someone asked for them.
Yeah.
Like 2,000 words on Christmas, or Katharine Hepburn, Kafka, The Situation in Liberia, all sorts of things. And it added up to, what, over 100,000 words?
Exactly. And this accidental nature perfectly mirrors her core philosophy, which she lays out right at the start. She says, ideological inconsistency is, for me, practically an article of faith.
I love that. It's basically permission to be human, right?
Yeah.
To not have it all figured out, to change your mind.
Precisely. She's encouraging everyone, herself included, to embrace the messiness, the fact that thinking and living aren't straight lines.
And she has these two sort of guiding lights for this idea that keep popping up. The first one is from Saul Bellow, that very careful, optimistic line, there may be truths on the side of life.
It's hopeful but tentative, isn't it? A possibility, not a guarantee.
Yeah. And the second one, maybe the ultimate anti-dogma statement, comes from Tracy Lord in the Philadelphia Store.
Oh, the best line. The time to make your mind up about people is never.
Never. So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack how Smith uses this flexible mindset to wrestle with some big tensions. You know, the inner self versus the outer world, artistic control versus, well, chaos, and the difference between writing fiction and reporting facts.
We'll be covering a lot of ground, everything from, like, the deep anxieties of writing the first 20 pages of a novel to the really harsh economic truths of post-war Liberia.
Okay, let's dive in. Where do we start? With the writer's own head.
Yeah, let's start there. Section 1, the inner life of the novelist and the anxiety of craft. Smith gives this brilliantly funny, but also painfully true, picture of the neurotic writer. She focuses on a type she calls the micromanager.
The micromanager. Okay, what defines them?
This is the writer who feels their novel only really exists right now, in the present moment, purely in the sound and feel of the sentence they're working on. It's not about the big picture yet.
It's all about the words, the rhythm.
Exactly, word-by-word perfectionism. And this, she argues, often leads to the specific kind of problem, a special breed of pathology she actually names.
Oh, really? What is it?
She calls it OPD, obsessive perspective disorder.
Obsessive perspective disorder. Okay, that sounds serious, but wait, isn't constantly fiddling with voice intense part of the job, being diligent?
But OPD is when that diligence becomes like a total fixation, almost paralysis. It's the compulsion to get the voice absolutely perfect in those opening pages. We're talking changing the first 20 pages maybe several times a day for months, sometimes even years. Smith admits she spent nearly 2 years just reworking one opening section of her own.
2 years on 20 pages.
Yeah. And she says the reason it's a disorder is because it doesn't come from confidence. It comes from a deep lack of confidence, not just in the writing, but actually in the reader.
Ah, okay. So how does that show up on the page? Can you tell?
She thinks so. If you look at novels by writers prone to this, those first 20 pages often feel packed tighter than tuna in a can.
Great image.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The writer is just so worried the reader won't get it that they cram everything in up front, all the backstory, all the character traits.
Right. She gives that funny example, doesn't she? Feeling you absolutely have to state right away that Sarah Malone is a social worker with a dead father.
Exactly. Because the writer is somehow terrified that you, the intelligent reader who might have tackled Joyce, won't be able to follow along unless you get that data point immediately.
It's like spoon feeding. It shows a lack of trust in the reader's ability to figure things out, to imagine.
Totally. And the irony Smith points out is that these really worked over, detail-packed character intros often just fall flat. They don't resonate as much as characters created with the lightest of brushstrokes.
Because those leave room for the reader.
Precisely. It trusts the reader's imagination. Her prime example is Kafka's Odradek.
Oh, Odradek. From the Cares of a Family Man. That weird little star-shaped spool of thread.
That rolls down the stairs laughing like rustling leaves. He's completely bizarre, unforgettable.
Honestly, I remember Odradek more clearly than characters I read about last week who had pages of description. Why does that work so well?
Because Kafka gives you just enough to spark your imagination, but not so much that it pins the character down. Odradek is just Weird, unexplained, pure existence. He sticks with you way longer than some character the author spent 3 years psychoanalyzing on the page.
It's the gaps, the things left unsaid.
Exactly. That's where the reader comes in. Now, to cope with this initial anxiety, this OPD tendency, Smith says writers often rely on these big external structures. She calls it scaffolding.
Scaffolding. Like for building the novel.
Yeah, but purely for the writer's own security. It's a hidden framework to help them feel like they can manage the huge task of a long novel. And the examples she gives are amazing.
Like what?
Oh, like dividing the novel according to the books of the prophets, or the sections of the Bhagavad Gita, or maybe the songs on a Public Enemy album.
Wait, Public Enemy? Seriously?
Yep. Or even the filmography of Grace Kelly. Anything idiosyncratic that gives the writer a map.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
Using Public Enemy to structure a novel. But the key is it's secret, right? The reader never sees it.
That's the crucial part. Use it if it helps you build the thing, she says, but, and this is the vital advice, don't forget to dismantle it later. Take off the training wheels before you show it to anyone.
Right. Which leads perfectly into what she calls the 24-karat gold-plated piece of advice for novelists.
Ah, yes. The necessity of delay. Put the novel in Vindor.
For how long?
A year. Or more if you can stand
A
it.
whole year. That sounds like torture for the writer.
It probably is, but she insists it's the only real secret to effective editing. You need distance. You need to stop being the writer and become the reader.
You need fresh eyes. Only distance gives you that.
Exactly. And she perfectly describes the moment you really see your own flaws. It's 2 years after it's published, 10 minutes before you go on stage at a literary festival.
Oh, cringe. That's when every clumsy sentence, every unnecessary bit of showing off just screams at you.
It's distressingly obvious, as she puts it. That's the moment you realize you should have listened and put it in the drawer.
It's funny, isn't it, that initial writer's problem, the OPD, that constant changing, it's a version of her core idea, embracing inconsistency.
Mm-hmm.
But then for the whole book, you need structure, and then you need distance to see clearly.
It's a process of finding the right kind of flexibility at the right time.
Okay, so that's the writer's internal battle. What about the bigger picture? The whole idea of authorship itself. That's where things get really contentious, right?
Absolutely. Section 2. Contesting definitions of authorship and reality. Smith moves from the novelist's desk to this huge intellectual battlefield. It's basically French theory versus modernist genius.
The classic showdown. Who's controlling the text?
Yeah,
The author or the reader?
exactly. On one side, you've got Roland Barthes and his famous idea of the death of the author.
Right. The author as a person with feelings, history, intentions, doesn't matter anymore once the book is out there.
Barthes replaces the author with the scripter. This is just a function, stripped of history, passions, just an immense dictionary tracing patterns without origin.
And the text itself.
It becomes this tissue of quotations, a multi-layered thing you can explore, range over, but not pierce, to find some single authorial meaning.
So the reader is totally free. Read it backwards, interpret it through modern politics, whatever. Smith says she found this super exciting in college, right?
Yeah, totally liberating. No need to worry about what the author meant. But then, on the complete opposite side, you have someone like Vladimir Nabokov.
Yeah, Nabokov,
Right.
the master controller.
Smith calls him one of the last great 20th century believers in the autonomy of the author. He doesn't just write the book, he designs the experience of reading it.
Like an architect. She uses that great analogy of Frank Lloyd Wright.
Yeah, forcing you into a grand house through some awkward little side door just to control how you first perceive the space. Nabokov builds the author's control right into the structure.
And he wasn't exactly charitable towards readers, was he?
Charitable is not the word. He called them mere lip-moving ghosts, basically incapable of figuring out his intricate patterns, his cat's cradles.
Ouch.
And he absolutely hated external interpretations, finding Freudian symbols everywhere, or political meanings, or myths. He had a special word for all that.
Poshless. We need to unpack that. It's more than just bad taste, isn't it?
No, much more. For Nabokov, poshlist is the great enemy of art. It's not just tacky, it's sentimental, secondhand, cliché thinking. It's using easy, prepackaged ideas to avoid the real, difficult beauty and complexity of the actual work.
So reading Lolita is just like a commentary on American culture, would be poshlist.
Absolutely, because it ignores the specific horror, the specific language, the artistry in favor of a simple, comfortable label. It's an intellectual shortcut.
So Barthes gives total freedom. Nabokov demands total submission to his design. And this control even extends to how Nabokov talks about reality itself.
Yes. Reality for him isn't simple. It's an infinite succession of steps, levels of perception, false bottoms. You can get closer and closer to it, he says, but you never get near enough.
So even the author can't fully grasp it, but he designs the layers the reader encounters.
Exactly. It's a controlled maze, ultimately unknowable.
Okay, so those are the two poles. Where does someone like David Foster Wallace fit in? Smith brings him in as a kind of modern response to both extremes, right?
Right. Wallace had this strong belief about what serious fiction should do. It shouldn't just be pure pleasure like low art. It needs to reflect real life's ratio. Maybe 49% pleasure, 51% pain.
The mission statement: comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable.
Exactly, and his big critique was aimed at the self-absorption, the solipsism, he saw in a lot of earlier postmodern fiction, stuff that just spirals in on itself.
He wanted writing to move outwards.
Yes, he insisted awareness had to be extros, outward moving, away from just navel-gazing and towards connecting with other people.
His own writing can be incredibly complex, almost punishingly so. Does that help with connection? Smith addresses that, doesn't she?
She does. She suggests the complexity itself is often the point. It's there to dramatize the internal state, the pathology of disconnection. Think about his use of the recursive sentence.
Recursive, meaning it folds back on itself.
Exactly, especially in stories like The Depressed Person. Imagine reading a sentence that keeps looping back, adding clauses, footnotes, qualifications, reflecting the character's own obsessive, self-analyzing thoughts.
So the structure mimics the feeling.
Perfectly. The character feels bad, then feels bad about feeling bad, then analyzes why they feel bad about feeling bad. And the sentence structure traps you right there with them, in that endless emotional vacuum.
Wow. The form is the content. It shows the opposite of that outward extorse connection he wanted.
Right. It shows the trap he's trying to find a way out of. And that leads to Wallace's fundamental question, maybe the fundamental question: how do I recognize that other people are real as I am?
How do we bridge that gap between selves?
And his answer, which Smith points out comes partly from Wittgenstein, isn't some grand revelation. It's about language, but language as a function of relationships between persons.
So connection happens through talking, sharing, the simple stuff.
Basically, yes. Breaking out of the solipsistic loop happens through genuine communication, through acknowledging the other person through language.
Okay, that struggle for authenticity and connection takes us neatly into the next section, doesn't it? Where Smith looks at identity universality.
Exactly. Section 3, Identity, Universalism, and the Search for Authenticity. And she starts with a really close look at Zora Neale Hurston.
Specifically, their eyes were watching God. A masterpiece, but one that caused a lot of trouble when it came out.
Huge trouble. Smith emphasizes Hurston's background growing up in Eatonville, Florida, an all-black town. Hurston said this gave her a kind of metaphysical confidence. She wasn't defined solely by reacting to racism.
That famous line, "I am not tragically colored." She felt her identity was as natural and complete as, say, Frenchness is to Flaubert.
Right, and this confidence let her write their eyes in this rich, black-inflected dialect completely unapologetically, which, back in 1937, alienated almost everyone.
How so?
Well, many white readers found it difficult or preferred her more anthropological, exotic writing, and maybe more painfully, some prominent black critics were embarrassed. They felt the unlettered dialogue played into racist stereotypes, gave ammo to segregationists.
A really tough position for her. But Smith focuses on what Hurston achieved, this quality she calls soulfulness.
Yeah, and she breaks down soulfulness into roughly 3 different shades or meanings.
Okay, what's the first?
The first is about transforming pain, taking sorrowful feelings and turning them into something beautiful, communal, even ecstatic, like the scene where the townsfolk gather and sing this incredible, mournful song about a dead mule.
Taking grief and making art out of it, together.
Exactly. The second shade is more about intuition, following a feeling wherever it leads. Emotional honesty, like young Janie seeing the pear tree blossom and just impulsively kissing the boy by the gatepost. Pure, spontaneous life.
Uncalculated feeling.
Right. And the third shade is simpler, earthier, like soul food. It's about being hearty, unfussy, authentic, without pretense, like Janie putting on overalls and finding real joy working in the fields with tea cake.
Just being real, unashamed.
Exactly. And Smith connects this very personally. She talks about how, as a reader, especially one often trained to look for a neutral, universal style in literature.
Which often implicitly means a white male style.
Right. She found reading Hurston undeniable. She says she recognized characters who had my hair, my eyes, my skin, even the ancestors of the rhythm of my speech.
That's powerful. It cuts through that whole idea of colorblind reading.
It really does. Smith points out that claiming to be colorblind is often easier for those who already see themselves reflected everywhere in that supposed neutral universal. For others, seeing your specific identity affirmed on the page is incredibly important, emotionally validating.
That tension between the specific and the universal, and the search for something authentic, carries into her discussion of contemporary novels too, right? She contrasts two.
Yes, two novels wrestling with the American dream and authenticity. First, Joseph O'Neill's Netherland. Sorry, I misspoke. The author is Joseph O'Neill.
Netherland, okay. The guy trying to cope after 9/11 plays cricket.
Right. The narrator, Hans, this sort of bourgeois European guy adrift in New York, he becomes fascinated by his friend Chuck Remkessoon, this Trinidadian immigrant entrepreneur.
And he kind of romanticizes Chuck.
Totally. He turns Chuck into an authenticity fetish. Chuck seems so alive, so full of simple wisdom, think fantastic compared to Hans's own weariness. Chuck represents something real that Hans feels he's lost.
But the novel itself calls him out on this, doesn't it? Through his wife.
Yes, his wife, Rachel, nails it. She accuses him of perpetrating a white man's infantilizing elevation of a black man.
Oof. So the novel shows that the authenticity Hans sees is just his own projection. A fake?
Exactly. It's serving Hans's own needs, letting him feel connected to something real while remaining politically detached, just admiring the sky and feeling vaguely significant.
Okay, so that's one take on authenticity as a dangerous fetish. What's the contrast?
The contrast is Tom McCarthy's Remainder, a very different beast. The narrator, he's just called the reenactor, has this mysterious accident, gets a huge payout.
And uses the money to do what?
To obsessively, meticulously recreate moments of authentic experience he vaguely remembers from before the accident, or even just moments he imagines, like the exact feeling, the smell, the texture of begging on a specific street corner.
He wants to recapture that, the raw feeling of it.
The sensation, the pure physical reality. And Smith draws this fantastic contrast using cricket, which appears in both novels.
Right. In Netherland, cricket is symbolic.
Yeah, it symbolizes immigration, belonging, the whole deferred promise of the American dream. It's loaded with meaning. But in Remainder, cricket is pure facticity.
Facticity. Need a translation there.
It just means the quality of being a real material fact in the world, their rareness. So in Remainder, every single action in the recreated cricket game, the ball hitting the bat, landing on the grass, is treated like this unique physical event. Each ball bowled is like a crime, a murder, leaving a real mark in space.
Wow. So Remainder isn't about symbolism, it's about the physical stuff of reality.
Exactly. McCarthy wants to create zinging, charged spaces, making us aware of the concrete reality of everything, the floorboards, the cat flap things that traditional realism often smooths over by focusing on time and plot. Remainder focuses on space and material fact.
Fascinating contrast, from authenticity as a dangerous idea to authenticity as intense physical reenactment. And Smith ties this idea of multiple perspectives, multiple realities to a political figure too.
Yes, she turns to Barack Obama and his memoir, Dreams from My Father. She argues it's fundamentally different from a typical political memoir like, say, John McCain's Faith of My Fathers, which is about linear inheritance.
How is Obama's different?
She says Obama's real theme is about occupying a dreamed space created by both parents, his black Kenyan father and his white American mother. It's not a straight line from one identity, but a synthesis.
A blend.
And his great gift, Smith argues, is having more than one voice in your ear. He can shift registers, speak in different cultural cadences. She mentions him capturing a Jewish male voice, a South Side elder, a Kenyan relative.
He code switches naturally.
Effortlessly. He operates in what she calls Dream City, where mixed, complex backgrounds are the norm. But this variability causes huge anxiety for some people.
Is the single-voiced abomination crowd, as she puts it.
Right. They get nervous. Does his ability to speak multiple languages mean he's fake? A double dealer, that classic fear. He says one thing, but he means another.
Because he's not just sticking to one expected script.
Exactly. That anxiety comes from this deep-seated idea that you have to perform your cultural allegiance first, tell the truth second. But Obama, having that internal double consciousness, resists being pigeonholed. He might speak objectively about difficult issues like absent black fathers, refusing to be silenced by fears of being called an Uncle Tom.
So for Smith, his refusal to simplify, to pick just one voice, is actually his strength. It reflects a more complex reality.
Precisely. It resists the pressure to let culture trump reality.
Okay, this leads us towards morality, doesn't it? the responsibility of the writer, whether in fiction or nonfiction.
Yes, Section 4, the moral duty of the novel and the reportage of the real. Smith pivots back to the 19th century first, looking at George Eliot.
A novelist who took the moral purpose of fiction very seriously.
Absolutely. Eliot saw the novel almost as a substitute for religion or metaphysics. Its goal was the fullest truth, the least partial good. Morality wasn't abstract, it was found in human relationships.
And she felt it was wrong, morally wrong, to just focus on the main character.
Yes, because true morality demands we imagine the lives of others, especially ordinary people. That's captured in that incredible quote.
The one about hearing the grass grow.
That's it. If we had a keen vision and feeling for all ordinary human life, it would be like hearing the grass grow and the squirrel's heartbeat, and we should die of that roar which lies on the other side of silence.
We'd be overwhelmed by the sheer reality of other lives if we paid full attention.
Exactly. We tune most of it out to survive. But Eliot believed the novel's job was to force us to tune in, at least partially. That's why her novels are so complex, filled with secondary characters.
Which led to that famous complaint from Henry James about Middlemarch, right? But why always Fred? Why waste time on Fred Vincy when we want to know about Dorothea?
And Smith's answer, channeling Eliot, is that Fred is crucial because love enables knowledge. It's Fred's love for Mary Garth, who comes from a different social sphere, that forces him to imagine her family's reality, their struggles.
So when he messes up, borrows money irresponsibly.
The consequences aren't just abstract. He sees the real pain he causes the Garth family. That's practical morality, learned through empathy sparked by relationship. We teach each other how to be moral. Eliot demanded the novel show this.
Wow, that sets a high bar for fiction. And Smith uses this as a bridge, right? To pivot from Eliot's fictional morality to something much harsher.
A very sharp pivot. She moves directly from 19th century novels to her own 21st century reportage from Liberia covering the humanitarian crisis after the Civil War with photographer Elizabeth Holdaway. Here, that roar on the other side of silence is devastatingly real.
And she makes a point of sticking strictly to the facts, being impartial.
Absolutely, just reporting what she saw and learned. She starts with the brutal economic context. Liberia was nicknamed the Firestone Republic.
Because of the rubber company.
Yes, because of deals that gave massive land concessions to foreign, agriculturally extractive companies for incredibly low prices.
She mentions the 2005 Firestone deal specifically, 50 cents an acre, for 37 years.
It's almost impossible to comprehend. 50 cents an acre. She also notes the criticism from Global Witness about a similar deal with the steel giant Middle, basically accusing them of exploiting the lack of regulation to get huge advantages.
And the human impact of these deals.
Appalling. On the Firestone plantation, workers were still living in camps built in 1952. And despite official rules against child labor, the quotas were so high, tapping 650 to 750 trees a day, that parents basically had to bring their young children out before dawn to help, just to earn enough to eat.
Just grim. And the lack of basic services, like education.
That's where Smith captures this really heartbreaking scene in a place called Unification Town. She talks to a 14-year-old girl, Evelyn B. Momo, who she says just vibrates with intelligence.
And Evelyn breaks down.
Yeah, she starts crying while listing what their school library needs, just the basics.
Yeah.
Books, pencils, electricity, teachers. And she just keeps saying, there's no money, do you understand? There's no money at all.
God, that's rough.
And the kids' dreams, what they want to be when they grow up, pilot, sailor in the Navy, anything that involves getting away, flight.
Understandable.
Yeah.
And the healthcare situation was just as bad.
Terrifyingly so. Smith reports being told there were something like 23 Liberian doctors and 14 nurses.
13 nurses.
In the entire country.
That number alone just tells you everything about the collapse of the state.
It really does. And finally, the reportage details the kind of social exploitation that thrives in that environment, the complete opposite of Eliot's practical morality.
Like the infidelity tax.
Yeah, where husbands would essentially push their wives into having affairs so they could then charge the other man compensation, often in the form of unpaid labor.
Just pure exploitation of weakness.
And it wasn't just local. She notes reports of UN peacekeepers, the people supposedly there to help trading food for sex with vulnerable teenage refugees. The conclusion Smith draws is bleak but clear. Exploitation is universal. Where there is weakness, exploit it. It's a chilling link between the moral universe Eliot tried to build in fiction and the amoral reality on the ground.
Okay. Let's shift gears again, from the harsh external reality back to the world of images, performance, identity, this time in cinema.
Right. Section 5, the cinematic self. Archetypes and modern critique. Smith looks at Hollywood, comparing two iconic female stars who broke the mold. First, Katharine Hepburn.
Who Smith clearly adores. She took that Philadelphia storyline as her motto. Hepburn wasn't the typical glamorous star.
Not at all. Her persona was shaped by her upper-class background, that unmistakable Bryn Mawr twang, but also by this ambivalent relationship with femininity. Smith connects this partly to the trauma of her older brother's suicide when she was young.
She was very physical, wasn't she? Not delicate.
Described as one long muscle, athletic, angular, she refused to play the standard feminine game, which actually got her labeled box office poison for a while.
Hard to believe now.
But she stuck to her guns and became this enduring model of female independence.
And the contrast is Greta Garbo.
The Swedish Sphinx, the divine. Totally different energy. Garbo wasn't natural. She was ethereal, mysterious. She projected this deep European ennui of Weltschmerz, this kind of existential sadness that was completely new for MGM.
MGM wanted sunshine. Garbo gave them shadow.
Exactly. And her image was carefully crafted. The director, Moritz Stiller, made her lose weight. The lighting was always dramatic, like Rembrandt. She cultivated this untouchable quality, this inviolable selfhood.
She went on strike if she hated a script.
She did. Her whole image hinted at this dangerous lack of physical vitality. She was this enigma the public could project onto, but never really know, unlike the forthright Hepburn.
Okay, so those are classic archetypes. How does Smith view more modern films? She looks at a couple. One challenging, one less so.
Much less so. First, the challenging one, George Clooney's Syriana.
The complex thriller about the oil industry.
Right. Smith sees it as this unprecedented scenario where arguably Hollywood's biggest male star uses his clout to make a deliberately difficult, politically charged film designed to agitate the audience.
It doesn't simplify things.
Not at all. It's dense, multi-stranded. It treats the audience like experts, assuming you can handle complexity.
Yep.
It prompts you to begin thinking, not to finish.
And importantly, she says it respects the people in the countries it picks.
Yes, it shows them as human as we are. It acknowledges the complex global reality without resorting to easy stereotypes. It takes its responsibility seriously.
Okay. And then the other end of the spectrum.
Oh boy. Date movie. Sam does not hold back. She calls it flat out the worst movie I have ever seen.
Uh-huh. What was so bad about it? Beyond just being a bad spoof movie.
She uses the specifics. Allison Hannigan in a fat suit beating up a homeless guy, parody scenes involving machine guns to diagnose something deeper.
It's not just unfunny, it's
less than human. That's the phrase she uses. The laughter it aims for is like the laughter of monkeys. For Smith, it represents this terrifying endpoint, a new concept in crap, a film that is in itself an absence of film.
wow. An absence of film, just pure emptiness.
Exactly. No pleasure, no pain, no thought, just nullity. A reflection of devolved taste.
Okay, that brings us towards the end. How does Smith wrap all these threads together? The writing anxiety, authorship, identity, morality, the messy reality.
She brings it back home very personally, the conclusion, the memory of the remainder. It centers on her attempts to interview her own father, Harvey Smith, about his experiences on D-Day.
And she admits she went into it with expectations, a certain narrative she wanted.
Yeah, she confesses her own vanity. She was trying to force his story into my mold, the dramatic Saving Private Ryan mold of heroism, trauma, clear narrative arcs.
But his reality wasn't like that.
Not at all. It was, in his words, an accidental thing, ambivalent, unplanned. He kept insisting he'd had an easy day, that he was no Bert Scaife, who was some legendary decorated soldier.
He downplayed the heroism. What did he remember most strongly?
Not battlefield glory, but a moment of personal shame. An act of casual cruelty towards a captured German soldier, making him walk out in front of their tank as a human shield. That stuck with him more than any heroics.
And Smith realized she couldn't just write his story for him, be his talking cure.
Exactly. She couldn't impose her narrative structure onto his messy, ambivalent reality. And then the ultimate anticlimax, his death.
How did it happen?
Absurdly. He missed his death. He died in the middle of a sentence, joking with his nurse. No dramatic final words, no neat closure.
Just stop.
Just stopped. And this non-event, this failure of life to conform to narrative expectations, becomes her final point, tying everything together. She says after his death, after missing the actual moment, she got the dust. And from that absence, she tried to extrapolate a story, as writers will, but found myself instead in a kind of stasis.
Stasis.
Yeah.
Like nothing quite resolved.
Exactly. She describes it as a moment in which nothing happened and keeps not happening forever. But that idea, the bit that's left over, the uncontainable reminder, that's the key takeaway.
So all these essays, championing inconsistency, questioning authorial control, looking at messy realities like Liberia or her father's memories, they all point to this.
They all point towards embracing the stuff that doesn't fit the neat story. We saw her explore Nabokov's tight control versus Wallace's struggle for connection, Hurston's specific voice achieving universality, the failure of authenticity as a simple concept. It's all about resisting easy answers.
Which leads to that final provocative question she leaves us with. If things like truth and justice are maybe just perspectives, like V says in V for Vendetta, and if reality is often just that moment in which nothing happened, what then?
How does accepting that remainder, the inconsistency, the lack of neat endings actually help us? How does it free us from this constant pressure to find a definitive story for ourselves and for others?
What do you think the answer is?
Well, maybe the freedom lies in recognizing that the story doesn't have to be finished. That, like Tracy Lord said, the time to make up our minds is never. We're always changing, always inconsistent.
And that inconsistency isn't a flaw.
Maybe it's where the real truth is. As Bello hinted, maybe that's where we find the truths on the side of life. In the mess, not the neat package.
A really powerful thought to end on.
Yeah.
Embracing the remainder. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.